Okay, guys, so this is a video just to give you a bit of a whistle stop tour on how to use Premiere Pro. You would have hopefully been given a demonstration by your teacher, but this is just to kind of back that up because obviously sometimes it takes us a few times to kind of get the hang of things and really do watch this video and go through all of the steps because it will help you get better at video editing. Now, Premiere Pro is a program that is used in the industry. So, if you were to go out and become a filmmaker one day or to work in a TV production house, you very likely be working with a program like Adobe Premiere Pro or Apple has their own version. So, these are actually really important pieces of software to get to grips with. Now, Adobe Premiere Pro could be found here in the Start menu. So you just need to kind of click it on and you'll be able to log in with your school email address and password in the same way that you log into Illustrator and Photoshop. Now, once you're logged in, you'll probably get a page that comes up like this. Just tick that off. And the first thing you need to do is say New Project. So when it says New Project, you'll have to give it a name. So I'm just going to say Demo. And we need to decide where we're going to save it. Now, in the previous video, I talked to you about how to use the media drive. What you will then do, so because we're working with Premiere Pro, we need to go into the media drive. We need to find our folder and we need to find our name. And then we are going to select that folder to save that into. So you should see M, which stands for media drive, the name of the folder, and then your name should be here. Sorry, Dexter, picking on you there. And then you will just leave all the other settings the same and press OK. So then what will happen is your workspace will load up. I'll talk to you about what each of these mean. It looks a bit complicated, but actually it's quite simple when you kind of get to grips with it. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need we need some footage to work with. So I earlier in my previous video downloaded a video. So I'm going to copy that video from my downloads folder and I'm going to put it in my media drive, which is explained in the last video. So I'm going to continue working with Dexter's folder and I'm going to place that video in there. And I'm going to rename it because it just makes my life easier, especially if I'm working with a lot of files. So I'm going to call it Golf Overhead Shot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag, now that it's in my folder, or it's in Dexter's folder, I'm going to drag this over to this little place here. So this is my clip bin. And this is essentially where I keep all of my footage that I'm going to work with. So that's where I keep my footage. Let's get one more piece of footage there. So let's go to Pexels and let's find another piece. One thing to say, when you're working with Premiere Pro, try to work with horizontal or what we call landscape photographs, not portrait. Okay, so obviously this is how we film on our phone, but this is not suitable for a film. You don't watch a film on a TV lengthways, you watch it in landscape. Oh, I like this one. Let's go for this one. So I'm going to download that and going to press OK. Now this is free stock video files that you can use in your project. If you were to use them for commercial reasons, so for example, if you were selling your video, you would have to buy the license for it. So I just want to make that you're aware of that. So again, I've just downloaded it. If I go to my downloads, I will find that I've got that and you can see it down here as well. So I'm going to copy that again, go into my media drive, find my name or Dexter's name in this case, and I'm going to paste that in and I'm going to change the name of it. So I'm going to call it C Overhead Shots. You don't know what's in that video, but anyway. So now I've got two. I'm going to open up Premiere Pro again and I'm going to drag that C Overhead Shot into my project bin. And so now I've got two clips to work with. So the next thing to introduce you to is the timeline. So now in the timeline, what happens is this is essentially where the magic happens. This is where you put your project together. So I'm going to drag over my golf shot and you'll see the plus button. And what's going to happen is that is going to add it to my timeline. Okay. So that's really cool because now I've got one video shot. And what I can do is if I press the space bar, there we go, it will start to play my clip in real time so I can see what it's going to look like. Now it's starting to lag a bit, and the reason why it's starting to lag a bit is because it hasn't been rendered. I'll explain that in a moment, but I'm just going to cut it a bit shorter. So at the end of this, I can make it shorter, I can make it as long as the clip is. I think the clip is 24 seconds over there. So I'm going to make it just a little bit shorter, pulling it over there. I could do that two ways. I could just drag and drop it, or I can use this razor tool to cut it up, which is pretty cool. So for example, if you wanted to slice out a section, you could actually take that and then press delete and move these two together. So you can actually slice up your clips if you wanted to. Sorry guys, I've got a bit of a cold today. So I've now got one clip, and as I say, because it's yellow, that means to me that I need to render it. So I am going to go to up here to sequence, and I'm going to render into out. Rendering can be a bit of a pain because it takes quite a while, as you can see, to render, particularly if you've got a lot of files to render. So what I would suggest to you is that you render often, okay? So if you can see yellow or red here, just go up here to sequence, render into out, and just render those sections. If render into out doesn't turn it all green, then press render effects into out, which I'll show you in a moment. So I'm just going to press the space bar. So you've got two sections. So always click on this one, but if that doesn't work and you've still got some red or yellow options, click on this one as well. So then what that does is if you press the space bar, you can see that that's playing nice and smoothly now. So I need another clip for it to transition to. So I'm going to pop this one in here. Notice how this one, interestingly, doesn't actually have any sound. And I can see that it doesn't have any sound because this part here, this bar down here. Now, if you look here, you've got V1 and you've got A1. V1 stands for video, A1 stands for audio. This one doesn't have any audio, whereas this one does. Now, if I want to get rid of the audio on this one, I can right click and I can go to unlink. And what that does is it unlinks the sound from the back. So I can move this sound around, or I can just delete it completely. That's really cool if you're making a music video or you want to put music over it instead of having sound. You can just get rid of the audio, particularly if you've got like wind in the background or something like that, and you can lay down a completely new audio track. Now, if you were laying down an audio track, so for example, let's get some I've got some BBC sound effects is really cool, which you'll have a link to. If I download a sound effect, so let's just download the first one that we can find. So this one here, I'm going to download this as an MP3 file. Comes down here. Need to do exactly the same thing. I know it's annoying, but you have to get in the habit of doing this. So I'm going to copy. Then I'm going to go into here. I'm in Dexter's file, aren't I? So I'm going to go into Dexter's. And then I'm going to paste that in there. Now, you will rename that, but I'm doing this quickly, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And then you're going to drag that over to here. So whenever you import an audio file, it looks like this. And then when you drag it over, it becomes a green bar. You cannot put it up the top because it's audio, but you can put it at the bottom. Okay. And then you can see that as I'm playing that, you've got the bars going up and down, so that shows me the audio. Again, you can clip this, you can razor and crop it and take bits and pieces out, and you can do whatever you need to do with that. Okay, I'm just going to take the sound out for now. I'm going to make this clip a little bit shorter, but what you will notice is that because these are two different video files, this is a different resolution. And so actually what's happened here is that it's smaller than this one in terms of the frame. That just means that it's kind of not as high resolution as this one. So what I can do is if I right click on this and I go scale to frame size, that will make it the same frame size. So now when I go from these two, it looks like it's been shot from the same position, okay, or from the same resolution. Another way of doing that is I can double click on this and I can actually just change the size. It's also pretty cool because I can actually turn it around and do whatever I need to do with it. But the most accurate way of getting it to the actual frame size is to scale to frame size. I feel like that's zoomed in too much now. I'm just going to go backwards. And yeah, if in doubt, edit undo is your best friend, and you can keep doing that. So right click and scale to frame size. And so what I've got here is, again, I need to render it because that's the red. That was a bit quicker that time. And so what I've got here, if I press play, is I've got this sequence that then goes into, on the timeline, my next sequence just over here. So that's essentially the basics of editing. But obviously, we want to be a bit more creative than that. So there's a couple of things that I want to show you here that you can do. So the first thing you can do is you can do slow motion. So if I wanted to do slow motion, I would need to press and hold on here and open it up to get the rate stretch tool. And the rate stretch tool, what it does is if I stretch it out that way, it makes the clip slower. So you can see there it's a lot slower. Any change you make, you need to render. So that's really important to remember. So it will make it a lot slower. Or if I go the opposite way and make it closer together, it will make it faster. So you can see that. Now I'm just going to undo that to get it to the normal size because I don't need to do that. So that is under there and it's called Rate Stretch Tool. Another thing I can do is add text. Now, if I click on here and add the text, I can start writing. So I'm going to say fishing. What are they, dolphins? We don't fish for dolphins, do we? And I've got my text here. Now, if I want to edit that text, what I can do is I can go up here and I'm going to go to graphics and it will change my layout slightly. And if I click on that and I go to edit, I can see that I've got fish in there. And now in this section, I can play around with that. I can make it bigger by moving the arrow tools over there. I can change the font style. So again, you can use Adobe fonts like we've been using before. I can change the font style here. I can also use this arrow if I want to move it around and get it in the right place. You can also resize it using that arrow up in the corner. And so I've got this kind of fishing thing going on over here. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go back to editing up the top. And you can see that this has created a new kind of almost looks like a clip. So you can actually see that that fishing comes on at that moment. And then actually, because the clip underneath it disappears before that clip, we actually are left with that on a black screen. Okay, so that's essentially how it works. And if I was to put it here, what would happen is the text would, now because it's not rendered, I'm just going to render that. So that's now finished rendering. It took a little bit of a while, which is why I kind of cut it out, because text and kind of things like slow motion and text can take a while. But now that it's rendered, you can see that when I play it, because this is kind of overlapping these two clips, we get something that looks like that. The last thing I want to show you then is how to use the effects library. Now in here you have lots of different audio transitions and video transitions, and you can play around. You've got video effects as well that you can play around with. So for example, if you wanted to turn your turn it black and white, there's actually, if you search in here, you can find the black and white. I think it's here somewhere. There's a black and white setting that you can search for. There we go. If you pulled that over to there, it would then make your background black and white. But that's for you to play around with and have a look at it. But what I want to show you is the transitions. So transitions is how we move from one clip to another. I'm just going to move this fishing one out the way for now. So we want to move from this clip to this clip. But what I want to do is use a transition that helps me to dissolve between the two rather than have this kind of quite abrasive cut. So what I can do then is go into here and get a cross dissolve, and I'm going to place that here in the middle of these clips. Once I've done that, I need to render it. And you'll see that when we go from the clips there, we get that lovely dissolve between the two clips. You can also use what we call a dip to black. So if you wanted it to fade in at the beginning, you can put that transition there. Or if you wanted to dip out at white at the back, at the bottom, you could do that too. So let's put that over and let's see what that looks like. Again, we've got some red marks here, so we need to render. And so now what you can see is we've got that nice fade in at the beginning. We have the text that comes in, we have a cross dissolve, and then we have a dip to white at the end. So that is just a real kind of basic tour on how to use Premiere Pro. There are loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of other things that you can do with this software. But in terms of just understanding the basics of putting something together and being able to kind of put stuff onto your timeline, that's essentially what you need. Remember, when you're finished, you need to press save, and it will save into your file with your name on it. So say in demo. Keep these safe. Never delete anything out of these two folders because these are kind of like backup folders that Premiere Pro makes. But yeah, that's essentially the basics. Your teachers will go into more depth about some of the more kind of complex things to do. YouTube is also a really great resource for those tutorials. There's loads of tutorials that can show you how to do some more complex things. But if you can get to grips with that, then you'll be able to make some fantastic products using Premiere Pro. So good luck, guys. I hope you found this useful, and yeah, speak to you soon.